what we say here is that we are the last generation of humans on Earth. We say that it's related to the fact that our global economy is going to collapse, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's not an if, it's a when. But there are some trends, what we can call mega trends that are happening that, I just want to share with you so that you take them for whatever you want them to take them with. And here, let me give you a rundown. We have an inevitable decline in population growth rate. And this is a steady decline that's been happening since 1963. We can't stop it. And this is worldwide. So it's not just one country or another. In general, population all over the world is, the population growth rate really is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So that means at some point we're going to reach what is known as zero population growth, and we're not going to grow anymore. Economic modes, we've had hunter-gatherers. We were for most of our existence, and we moved into agriculture maybe between 10 and 20,000 years ago, moved into industry manufacturing, some countries at least, about 200 years ago, and then we got into services. Today, the mode of the earth is moving in the direction from industry, from manufacturing into services. And within services, we're moving from manual services to internet services. And what this shows is that, we're in the business of this is where the jobs are being created, the new companies, etc. What we're doing is moving into the entertainment and the ad business. It's just ads and entertainment. So I think there's no doubt in my mind, at least, that the global economy will collapse, will crash. Okay, at some point. If we throw the nukes, it's just going to happen a lot faster. Okay, hopefully they don't do that so that we can live a little longer. And meanwhile, some other trends like loss of genetic diversity, and I think that's a big one, biologically speaking. And I think that's the main trigger for autism and the alphabet people, that we have today. We have a lot of these people coming out of the wombs, female wombs, and it's because all of us, we've exhausted our genetic pool. We're not very different anymore. Anyone you marry today is either your brother or your sister from a biological point of view. But there are some other trends that we got to look at, and it's what's happening in physics. And that's also something that maybe you should think about, because all we have, at least in the last 100 years, is irrational explanations. All we have are irrational explanations. There's not a single one that you can sink your teeth into. And here I just mentioned a couple. Gravity Probe B, they say they drag space-time around. With the Earth is dragging space-time around itself. Now, what sense does that make? Well, this is total irrationality, and I'm being kind with my language. It makes no sense whatsoever to say that you drag space-time around, or that gravity is the warping of time. What physical interpretation is that? And people might say, well, that's a euphemism, whatever, or an analogy, or whatever they want to call it, for the mathematical measurements and equations, etc., etc. We don't care. We don't care what it is. Tell us what is actually happening. That's what people want to know out there. They don't want an equation. They don't want you to telling them that time was warped. This is nonsense. This is poppycock. If this is the best that the mathematicians can do, all we can say is that they're not scientists. They're not physicists. Okay, they can do whatever math they want in their dark basements, but when they come out here, out of their caves, they have to tell us how this universe works. And if they cannot tell us how this universe works because they've given up on that, like what's his name? Richard Feynman said that they've given up on that. Well, then they're not physicists. That means that all they're doing now is just math. And then you have, these people, NASA want to go to Mars, And the question is, why are we going to Mars? Isn't that kind of irrational to go to a planet that, what are we going to do? Are we going to conquer the planet, claim it for the Queen of Spain? Are we going to colonize? Are we just running a project there where we study something and come back? Do we plan to live there? Do we plan to evacuate the Earth? What's the point of going to Mars? And here I showed the other day, these are some of the projects. This came out last week. It says 1 year on Mars. NASA analog astronauts begin mock red planet mission today, and you can watch it live. In other words, they're doing what was called Biosphere 2 in Arizona, where they put some people for 1 year in an enclosure to see how they cope so that they can prepare for the trip to Mars. They'll be putting other people in there, okay? This is more or less what the trip to Mars is going to look like. We're just going to take the little rocket ship and take it all the way to Mars. Some people are going to descend. Some people are going to stay on the rocket. Then they're going to come back. And that'll be the first mission, supposedly. It's going to be kind of like what they did with the moon. They send someone up there, then comes back. But, we never colonized the moon. Are we going to colonize Mars? And by colony, I mean, are we talking about this? This is what's out there in the plans. Okay, you can see they're planning on building cities out there, working the mines. Is this ever going to happen? Or is this just dreams that people have? And assuming it does happen, what's the point? What are we trying to do here? What's the goal? Is it to get out of the planet or something? Anyways, the point here is that there's no purpose of going to Mars. And if there's no purpose of going to Mars, why are we spending all this money, in all this space exploration? If it's for military purposes, developing technology, no problem. I can understand that one. But just to go to Mars, to actually settle and colonize like these people are indicating there, do they really believe that's going to happen? Or is that almost as much fantasy as, dragging space-time around? Frame dragging. And then again, all the irrational physical interpretations that we see today. I mean, isn't this a sign that we're at the end of the road in some way? That we have all these irrational physical interpretations coming from people who took courses at the university, who have PhDs, who are professionals in mathematical physics, if you can call it physics at all. And they come up with the most irrational physical interpretations you can imagine, and people just swallow it. Every single one, every single theory that's out there, they can tell them anything. They can tell them that angels move the earth around, and they'll believe it too because the mathematicians said it. Like maybe in the 3rd, 4th century AD, where the monks would go out there and tell the flocks. The only people who could read the Bible were the monks or the priests, and so the only guy who could read in the village was the priest, and he could tell them anything they wanted. People would have to believe him because he told them what the Bible was saying, and this is more or less the same. There's a group of people, a relatively small percentage of the population that knows all this advanced math, and that's fine, but when they come back, what do they tell us? That space is warped. That's what gravity is, that Earth drags space-time around and so on. And so the question is, are these even worse than the priests of the 5th century? Who are these people? Are they worth anything? Is it worth listening to them? Why are so many thousands and even hundreds of thousands, even millions in some cases, of people watching them and listening to them? It's like if people, want to get their shot of science for the week, and they say, I'm going to listen to Brian Greene or to Michio Kaku or one of those guys, right? Because I want to see, what's new out there in science. And these people come back with the biggest idiocy that you can imagine. And they believe them only on the basis of authority. Okay? And here you have some examples, okay? I collected a couple, just some of the most prominent ones, okay? I haven't collected them all, but you can see where I'm going with all this. Here you have Brian Greene, and he says a particle can be at 2 places at once. The slit experiment, they never figured that one out, so they had to figure out the most irrational physical interpretation they could find for that, And there are people who swallow a lot of that stuff and then parrot or use the same language, and it's like they're just imitating and passing it, to spreading it out, just regurgitating it. Here's one fellow, he says the following, he says, the double slit experiment provides no evidence for consciousness causing collapse of the wave function, but it also provides no evidence against it. This is really funny because a fellow is saying, what? He's saying it's causing the collapse of the wave function, but it also has no evidence against it. The collapse of the wave function, you cannot cause it with consciousness. So, yeah, the question here is, does this make any sense to say that consciousness collapses a function? What can that possibly mean? They just take all these cliches, right, from mathematical physics. It's really mathematics. And they just say, oh, yeah, the collapse of the wave function, and I did it with consciousness. And then they're looking for proof, for evidence. What sense does any of that make? Jesus. Here's another famous guy who tells us the following. He's a guru in black holes. And he believes that, there are black holes, or believed, because he's dead now, but he believed in black holes. He was the king of black holes. And what is a black hole? We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and that was what? A zero-dimensional nothing. And they say that this zero-dimensional nothing moves stars around. And people just accept it on the basis of authority because someone told them, that that's what happens out there, despite that they can't see, they can't touch the black hole, you can't touch a singularity. Singularity just swallowed all the matter. It's just a bunch of mass, no matter, even though mass is defined as the quantity of matter, a measure of the quantity of matter. So there's no matter, but there's mass. There's no elephant, but the tons are still there, So, what sense does any of this make? Here's another fellow, Michio Kaku, and he talks about wormholes. How to get to another universe. I guess everybody wants to escape not only the planet or the solar system, they want to escape the universe, the entire universe, just go somewhere else. That's what it seems like, at least. Another fellow, also famous here, Larry Krauss, and he talks about dark matter. So what is dark matter? Well, dark matter is that stuff that the mathematicians had to pour on their equations, around a galaxy to make the equations match what the astronomers are observing out there. So it's a variable. That's all it is. And now they're pointing their scopes, trying to detect dark matter, which is invisible, intangible, just like black holes. All this stuff is invisible and intangible, and nobody says anything about that. Everybody criticizes my robe, says, hey, it's invisible, intangible. Yeah, but did you ever think about the fact that black holes and wormholes and all this other stuff that, in the dark matter, dark energy, all that's invisible and intangible? And they say, well, we're going to find it indirectly by the effects that all this stuff has on visible matter. That's the only thing they've got. And I guess they're going to be doing this for the next million years. Yeah, this has to give you an idea that we're at the end of the rope as far as humanity is concerned, because we're at the end of the rope in just about everything, and among other things, physics. The fact that these people have never figured out how this universe works. Okay? And we're all about to expire here, and these people are still trying to figure out, what, gravity? They can't even figure out magnetism. So think about all this. This is the end of the rope for physics, for mathematical physics. After 400 years of trying, since the days of Galileo and Newton all the way to today, they have not figured it out, despite all the experiments that they ran, despite all the equations. And a lot of them will tell you, well, we'll never figure it out because Father Universe talks a different language than we do, and blah, 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 and it's the fourth dimension, and we're in the third, and all that kind of nonsense. Okay, here's another fellow, and his name is Hansen. Joe Hansen, he's on BS. Some call it PBS. I call it just BS. And he says, nothing is a lot. And as always, I hope you learned something. And he took several minutes to show you that he doesn't know what nothing is. He never defined the word nothing. And this is important because we're going to be bringing this subject now in the context of the multiverse. Okay, so what did this guy Hansen do? Well, he just talked a lot about nothing, trying to figure out what nothing is. I guess it's a definition that escapes him, that eludes him, and he's not the only one. Here's another fellow. His name is Neil Tyson. and he's also talking about nothing in one of his shows. And neither one of these fellows, could figure it out. What is nothing? And all they could do is just go through the motions of trying to figure out, by elimination, whether you can achieve nothingness. Not whether you know what nothingness is or what nothing is, because if you say, I lost a penny, well, what is a penny? And he said, the guy tells you, well, look, it's a little round, plate, blah, blah, blah. And you say, okay, I know what to look for now. But when you say nothing, what do you look for? How can you look for nothing? But these people try to search for nothing by eliminating all the somethings from a given volume. And here you have them, these two clowns, okay? And they're in the science of nothing. And you say, Bill, you're insulting them. You're treating them wrong. And no, I'm not insulting them, and I'm stating a fact. I'm not making fun of them or at all. I'm saying what is. These people are clowns, all of them. They're clowns. Why? And because they're not into science. They're not into physics. They're into the entertainment business. They're there to make you laugh, to say, oh, I got my shot of science this week, and now I know a lot more than I did last week. And all they're giving you is ignorance. And if you take them seriously, well, then you're a fool. But if you laugh at them, they're just clowns, and they're just in there for entertainment, and they're in there for their own careers. They're no longer physicists or into that subject matter. They are coached by people from Hollywood or from wherever, and all they do is shows where they try to popularize what the mathematicians are struggling to understand, which is how this universe works. And of course, all they can do is give you the most irrational explanations they can find. That's why they are clowns. They are vaudeville comedians. Okay, don't take them for anything more than that, because they will not give you any interpretation, physical interpretation about how this universe works. They cannot tell you what electricity is. They cannot tell you what magnetism is. They still cannot tell you what light is. They cannot tell you what gravity is. What can they tell you then? Well, that the Earth drags space around itself or time around itself. What is that? What kind of nonsense is that? It should click in your mind that something has to be definitely wrong. These people no longer have their feet on the earth. And so here, this is how these two fellows, they both essentially went through the same steps. And they said, look, math invented zero. You have 5 minus 5, you get 0. You have nothing. That's a mathematical transaction, right? Operation. 0 is equivalent to nothing, right? So now we have a mathematical definition, you could say, of nothing. It's 0, whatever that means. Okay. You have, why? Because you subtracted. In other words, you took 5 apples from 5 apples. You have nothing. Is that the definition of nothing? Is that absolutely nothing? I mean, for the purposes of physics. Okay. And so, they say no such thing as nothing outside of math. You only can have nothing in math, 5 minus 5, 10 minus 10, that kind of thing, but you cannot have nothing in physics, right? So it turns out that, they're missing half of the words, important words in physics, because, the universe, we said the other day, was what? Things and nothing, somethings and nothings. And some things they haven't defined very well. We can say that, but let's concede that. But they say they don't know what nothing is, or that there is no such thing as nothing for the purposes of physics, meaning that they only have half the universe. They only have the something. They don't know anything about nothing. Okay? Anyways, they go through this, I guess you could call it a thought experiment. You have a box, okay? You open it, is there nothing in there? Well, we all know there's air in there. Okay? We feel something in it, we call that air, a bunch of molecules. Okay, so we remove the air from the box somehow. Okay, is there nothing there? Well, they say you can't remove all the molecules, all the atoms from the box, even if you put it under, with vacuum pumps and pump it out, a sealed container, right? Even if you take it to the moon, to space, wherever, you cannot pump every atom out of there. Okay. So that's one issue. The other issue is that they say you have electromagnetic energy in there, some kind of thing. And what is energy? What is this electromagnetic energy? It's they think of it as a bunch of particles because it's mediated by photons, which are waves, and all that stuff is in there. Particles, waves, the whole shebang, okay, photons. So you can't get rid of that. And the question is, so you can never have nothing. You can never have a complete vacuum, which is, I guess, what you would call a nothing, right? And they say, look, even if you were to pull everything out, you have virtual particles coming in from the void constantly so fast, they come in and out so fast, they do that so fast that you can't even measure it. So even when you have absolutely nothing, meaning no particles, no photons, no energy, no whatever, no fields, you still have these particles coming in from the void on their own. I guess they just pop in and out constantly. And so you always have something in there, whether you know it or not. And then if that all fails, you can go between two galaxies and say, well, is there absolutely nothing between two galaxies? I mean, here you have, billions of light years, perhaps, and nothing in between. We could say nothing, right? Is there absolutely nothing there? And they say even there you have particles of, very few, but you still have something in any volume of space. And so they say, nevertheless, you have thoughts and actions and so on, and those are something anyways. You can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of anything, of everything that's in your box that you took out there, wherever you want, however you pumped it down. You can't get rid of everything that was in there, no matter what you do. Okay, and so they conclude that even nothing is something. So if all else fails, they win that one too. Okay, so there is no such thing as nothing because everything is something. And that should give you an idea why they never figured out what space is, because space is nothing, space itself, okay? Aside from the energy, aside from the particles, aside from all this other stuff, the waves, particles, whatever they want to put in there, if we take all that out, we have something else separate from all that garbage, and that's called nothing. Space is nothing. What is nothing? Well, it's very simple. Nothing is that which has no shape. If something is that which has shape, nothing is its antithesis, and that's that which has no shape. Very easy. They should have figured that out a long time ago. And they should have started with definitions so they could carry out a rational conversation. Okay, and leading to the subject matter today, here you have one fellow, his name is Sean Carroll, and he says the multiverse is real. And so one of the questions we're going to have is whether, multiverse means many universes. And the question is, what separates them? Nothing? What's between them? Nothing? And if it's nothing, meaning space, do we have one universe or many universes? Because remember, universe was what? Matter and space. And if space is nothing, and that's what's between two universes, this nothingness, then and each universe shares the same space, because I'm not sure you could isolate that space somehow, put a fence around it of some kind. Then do we have one universe or many universes? Do we have a universe or a multiverse, right? So that's the issue. And just in case, we have another fellow also famous, okay? His name is Max Tegmark, and he comes up with several types of multiverses. He's got the level 1, the level 2. He's got several level 2s, in fact. He's got a level 3 and a level 4. And you say, well, what is all this about? Well, you can see there, he says, one is the infinite universe. Multiverse, I mean. You just have all these new multiverses, these new universes which are created every second. You have the brain multiverse, which is the one that proposed by string theory. And you have inflation multiverse. Every time, for every second that there is, you have more and more universes. And so you have, it's like a bubble creator, a machine that creates bubbles. Every bubble is a new universe with matter in it and space and time and the whole works, energy. Okay. You have the quantum many worlds. Okay. That one is really weird because it says that if there is another universe, you will find that you're in that universe as well as in this one. And you're in all these multiple universes. Every time you take a step, you are in different universes at the same time. And in each one, you have a different history. Okay, so this is what the mathematicians concluded after 400 years of thinking so hard and doing their equations and all that nonsense. Okay, and then you have the mathematical multiverse, and he says, Techmark says that the only way you can really conceptualize it is mathematically. There is no multiverse outside of math. Okay, and so what does that have to do with physics? Absolutely nothing. So they had to create this multiverse to give some work to some of these so-called physicists, mathematical physicists, because they had nothing to do. They can't find dark matter with their telescope. They can't find black holes with their telescopes or their, all their equipment. They have different kinds of equipment to sense all these things. They can't detect it. They can only detect it supposedly indirectly through visible matter. Okay, and we explained that there is a different explanation for what they call black hole, dark matter, all that stuff, and we'll get into that later on in further on down the road. But the point is, they can't see or touch any of that stuff, so they said, well, they created this multiverse, and what is that? That's just a mathematical thing that says, hey, you have all these different lines that you can take, your life can take. They get into more of philosophy or religion, really, than they do into physics. And this is the way they're handling all this stuff. And the question is, doesn't this give you an idea that we're at the end of the line when they can't, have a solution to things, to simple things? I mean, we're forget about all the, the black holes, all that stuff that has out there, that happens out there in the cosmos. Please explain gravity. Why does this pencil fall to the floor? That's all I want to know. Do you need to bring dark matter into the picture? Do you need to bring black holes just to explain why the pencil fell to the floor? Magnetism, you have one magnet attracts the other. Very simple. Do we need black holes and all this other stuff that they've invented? Do we need multi-universes for it, and many universes? And so it has to give you an idea that something is terribly wrong if for the last 100 years they've been trying to give us quantum mechanics, general relativity, string theory lately, right, the last 50, 60 years, and they still can't answer the simple questions. We're not asking them to answer, what's happening out there in space where you can't see very well, with your telescopes, it's far away, you can't touch it, etc. No, just tell me where the pencil fell to the floor. That's all I want to know. Please explain the mechanism, okay? And that's where we're at. We haven't made a single dent in the world of science. Science, physics, physics, a branch of science. They haven't made a dent in physics because they can't answer the simplest of all questions. And there's many reasons for that. Among them, no definitions. They never defined any important term related to physics, okay? They've got all these mathematical concepts. That's what they use as mediators, and that's an irrationality there alone. And then they simulate everything with particles, with discrete particles, which ain't particles anyways, because the so-called particles used in quantum mechanics are actually equations, just motion, just concentrations of mass or charge that moves. And when you say, well, what's moving? Well, it's a number, a value. That's what's moving. And so, of course, when you have nonsense as your foundation, you cannot explain anything. And that's where they're at today. But in relation to, our standing, our where do we stand with respect to extinction, it should give you an idea that it's just another clue that I'm throwing in there that we're very close to extinction, okay? Together with the other things that I mentioned, such as, the alphabet people, autism, and loss of genetic diversity, and so many other things. And the fact that, there's no future in economics as well. I mean, what are we going to do for the next million years? Do services, entertainment, ads? So just pitch in now physics as well, or mathematical physics, mathemagics as we call it.